This webinar is designed to introduce you to the CPRS, or Certified Peer Recovery Specialist credential for Maryland. We will cover who a peer is, what a PRS does, and why this role is critical to our nation's response to the addiction epidemic. You will learn the requirements of a CPRS and how to get started on this career path if you should choose to embark on this journey. If you are part of an organization that is looking to use peers as part of your volunteer or workforce, please check out our webinar on best practices for peer integration. There are no CPRS CEUs earned with this webinar. It is just the basic information to get started. Please check out our courses and free webinars on our website. This webinar is brought to you by Voices of Hope, Inc., a recovery community organization in Cecil County, Maryland. Our mission is to advocate for recovery resources, advocate for people who use drugs, those who are in recovery, and their family members. We work to protect the dignity and respect of people who live with behavioral health disorders in our community. Preparing peers for the workforce and helping organizations to employ them well builds the recovery capital of our area, which helps people to get and stay well. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization that uses our funds to help people who need it most. We are offering this webinar for free, and please consider donating to our cause using the information posted at the end of this webinar. Thank you. There is a body of extensive research that indicates that peer recovery specialists hold promise for supporting recovery from substance use disorders. People receiving peer recovery support may experience improved access to social supports, greater housing stability, decreased criminal justice involvement, and decreased emergency service utilization. Data also shows that people receiving peer support also have reduced relapse rates, reduced hospitalization rates, and reduced substance use overall. The research on peer support in mental health systems is still emerging, but findings are promising. The research to date suggests that peer recovery support may result in increased empowerment and hope, increased social functioning, increased engagement and activation in treatment, and increased quality of life and life satisfaction. They also experience reduced use of inpatient services, decreased self-stigma, and decreased costs to the mental health system, and decreased hospitalization rates overall. The benefits of family peer support services result in decreased internalized blame. By providing education and connections with others, parent support services help family members reframe their experiences and debunk damaging myths about behavioral health conditions and emotional distress. And decreased family isolation. Parent support providers assist family members with identifying and accessing community supports that help them feel less alone. So where do peers work? Well, you'll find peers employed at treatment providers, in hospitals and emergency rooms, in the criminal justice system, in jails, drug court, and even with the police. You'll find them in recovery community centers and wellness centers, employed in health departments, and on crisis intervention teams, and on mobile crisis, just to name a few. So how much can I get paid as a peer recovery specialist? Well, the real worth is not monetary. For most people, the reward is in the work more than in the money. And I encourage you to Google peer recovery specialist on Indeed near you and see what's out there and how much people are paying. And for many people, this is just the start of a new career in healthcare. It's kind of like a foot in the door for healthcare administration, for directors of programs, or just as a certified peer recovery specialist, which is important work. Certification is through the Maryland Addiction and Behavioral Health Professional Certification Board. Their website is the resource for this credential, and the latest information can be found through them. But here are the basics. Print out the Certified Peer Recovery Specialist application from the MABPCB website. Take the courses, get the 46 CEUs, perform 500 hours in the role of a peer, and get a letter from your supervisor. You'll need 25 hours of registered peer supervisor supervision, 2 letters of recommendation, your transcript from your high school. You'll need to pay the application fee and then take the test. I'm reading from the CPRS application guide. The Maryland Certified Peer Recovery Specialist, CPRS, credential is an international certification and reciprocity consortium, IC&RC, approved certification created to identify the implementation of peer recovery supportive services provided by candidates in long-term recovery from mental health and substance use disorders. The CPRS certification validates the person in long-term recovery has obtained formal training and education of the knowledge, skills, and abilities in each of the 4 domains and is committed to the adherence of the Ethics Code of Conduct, principles, and service guidelines. Emphasis should be given to ensure the applicant has had training to properly engage in the state's Recovery-Oriented System of Care, ROSC. Subject matter may include substance use disorders and drug effects, mental health and medication-assisted treatment, somatic health and nutritional issues in the behavioral health population, such as relapse prevention, trauma, motivational enhancement, and stages of change, unquote. Some substance use and mental health trainings, specifically that are for counselors or clinicians, may not be approved as training for peer recovery specialists. When taking trainings to earn this credential, be sure the CEUs are applicable for peer recovery specialists. Peers have a different but complementary role from counselors, and our ethical considerations are different. You will learn more about this in the CPRS core trainings. So the general requirements of the Maryland Certified Peer Recovery Specialist credential. You must be at least 18 years old by the time of the exam. You must be a resident of the state of Maryland at least 51% of the time. You must self-identify as a person in long-term recovery from the effects of a behavioral health disorder, i.e. mental health and/or substance use disorder, for a period of 2 years or more. So, what are the effects of our varying disorders? This is for you to know and state in your application. Your definition of recovery will matter throughout your journey as a CPRS. If your pathway of recovery should grow and change, you will have an opportunity to express this in your recertification, which happens every 2 years after initial certification. So the educational requirements, you must provide proof of a high school diploma or a general equivalency degree, a GED. College transcripts may be submitted in lieu of a high school diploma or the GED. So the specialized training for the CPRS credential is that you must complete 46 total hours of documented behavioral health peer-specific continuing education units provided by an MAB PCB approved organizational provider within the 4 domains. So in addition to the specialized training, you are allowed 12 in-service training hours as part of the 46 hours of training. In-service training must be provided within an agency by an agency employee. Training provided within an agency by an outside consultant or professional is not considered as in-service and is measured by the same standards as other general training hours. In-service training must be domain relevant, so it has to fall into one of the categories of those 4 domains. So as part of those 46 hours of education, you must complete one of the core trainings of the CPRS credential. A very common one is the Recovery Coach Academy, or CCAR, which will give you 30 CEUs. Wellness and Recovery Action Planning, WRAP, Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, Peer Specialist Training, Intentional Peer Support, or Washington, D.C. Department of Behavioral Health Recovery Coaching. Those are all core trainings. You have to complete one of these in your initial application. So all the trainings that you have done within the last 10 years can count for your initial certification. Domain-specific college courses may qualify for CEU approval upon submission of the CEU. You'll need to look for the Training Provider CEU application on the MAB PCB website. There is a review cost and charge per CEU if you are to submit a course for review for your application. So you'll need to submit copies of all your training certificates with your application, so keep those copies. We keep a binder for each of our peer recovery specialists, so components of the application can be kept in one place and pieces added as they are completed. To meet the service hour requirements of the credential, one must complete 500 hours of documented, supervised, paid, or volunteer peer recovery support experiences in a clinical or community setting. That could be inpatient or outpatient treatment, an institution, in residential, community, or outreach situations within the last 2 years. That 500 hours may be accumulated at multiple service locations, but documentation must be submitted on organizational letterhead from current and/or former employers verifying service hours signed and dated by a registered peer supervisor and the applicant, along with the job descriptions for each employment location. To meet the supervision requirement of the credential, one must have 25 total hours of documented supervision by a registered peer supervisor conducted where the peer recovery support services are being provided, and one must receive that supervision at least twice per month. The required supervision must be specific to each domain of the credential, 5 hours in each, and an additional 5 hours in general supervision, including self-care. There is a peer supervision log included on the application. You will need to log each supervision, individual or group, which domain, and the registered peer supervisor's name and number. A copy of your supervisor's registered peer supervision certificate will need to be included in your application. A personal recovery statement must be included with your application. There is a page with 4 questions that you will need to answer through type, not handwritten. The application can be downloaded and typed directly from your computer. Then you will be able to print it out. Here are the questions. Number 1, briefly describe your experience with behavioral health recovery. Number 2, briefly describe your history of sustained recovery from a behavioral health disorder. Definition for sustained recovery is a process of change through which candidates improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. The process may include brief periods of relapse, but generally shows substantial overall improvement. Number 3, explain why you are interested in becoming a certified peer recovery specialist. And number 4, how do you think peer recovery support can benefit others? What do you think peer recovery specialists may guide others to achieve, e.g., to assist in engaging candidates in recovery from crisis services into treatment, to assist in accessing mutually assisted recovery supports, etc. You'll need to read, understand, agree, and sign the CPRS principles and guidelines of the credential. Voices of Hope has a separate webinar that will go into greater depth of this agreement, but here are the basics. This is the introduction to these principles in the application. A certified peer recovery specialist's sole mission is to help candidates and families recover from behavioral disorders and their related problems. To that end, the certified peer recovery specialist will help remove or overcome all obstacles to recovery and help each individual and family find resources within and beyond themselves to both initiate and sustain the recovery process. The certified peer recovery specialist actions will be guided by the following core recovery values and service guidelines. 1, gratitude and service. 2, personal recovery. 3, face and voice of recovery. 4, self-improvement. 5, honesty. And 6, authenticity. 7, keeping promises. 8, humility. 9, loyalty. 10, hope. 11, respect. 12, acceptance. 13, recovery integrity. 14, protection. 15, advocacy. 16, stewardship. And 17, honor. These principles are adapted from the Ethical Guidelines for the Delivery of Peer-Based Recovery Support Services by William L. White and the PRO-ACT Ethics Workgroup from August 2009. Google William L. White. He is the predecessor and expert on peer services that this workforce follows. You will need to understand and agree to these principles in order to complete your application. Failure to follow these guidelines can result in an ethics complaint and possible revoking of one's credential. If you know someone who is acting in an unethical manner as a CPRS, please file a grievance with the MAB-PCB Ethics Committee. The process is explained in the appendix section of the application. So part of the application is a release form. You will agree to ethical conduct according to CPRS principles and guidelines, honesty in your application, a release of information for approving the application, and investigation for any ethical violations. The release of information form from the application must be notarized. The recovery reference record of the application simply lists the contact information for the people who you have given the CPRS application recovery reference forms to. One of the forms will go to a sponsor, counselor, spiritual advisor, mentor, or accountability partner, and 2 will be professional references, people other than those listed above, friends in recovery or family members who know you professionally and can attest to your support skills. So again, you will give this 2-page form to 3 people. One will be a sponsor, counselor, accountability partner, spiritual advisor, or mentor. This person will be able to verify that you have a recovery pathway. The other people will be supervisors or work references like professors, instructors, or former supervisors. The form that you will give these 3 people, however, is the same. It includes how long have you known the applicant, and please describe the reasons you would or would not endorse the applicant to work in the behavioral health field as a peer recovery specialist. The second page of the recovery reference form will ask the person to rate the skills and knowledge of the peer recovery specialist on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being not applicable, 2 being poor, up to 5 representing excellent. Here are the other areas that you will be rated. The evaluators must return this form directly to the applicant in a sealed envelope with their signature over the seal. Try to include this envelope with the reference forms when you give it to your evaluators. Make it easy for them. After you have all the pieces together, you will include a check or money order for the fee, it's $125 at this time, made out to the MAB PCB and send it. Please make sure you keep a copy of the entire application just in case. The board will notify you if something is missing or there is a problem. If everything is approved, candidates will be notified by the board on how to register for the computer-based exam. Upon approval of your application, MAB PCB will give you information about where to take the exam. It will be on a computer, and you'll have about 2 hours to complete 75 multiple choice questions. A score of 500 or greater is required to qualify for CPRS status. Once you pass the test, you will receive an official certificate in the mail, and your name will be listed on the MAB PCB website as a Certified Peer Recovery Specialist. You will need to be recertified in 2 years. To be recertified, your CPRS certificate must be current and valid. You must have acquired 20 CPRS CEUs within those 2 years, which will have to include a minimum 6-hour ethical considerations course. You will verify that you have reviewed, read, and will uphold by practice the CPRS principles and guidelines, and you will need to complete the recertification application and pay the fee. And at this time, the recertification fee is $125. For many, the hardest part of the application process is finding a registered peer supervisor at an organization that you can volunteer or get an internship for the 500 hours in the role of a peer. Taking classes will make you a better candidate than most when applying for a peer recovery specialist position. Beware of positions that imply peer recovery support specialist but do not recognize the credential or have a relationship with the MAB PCB. These positions may be called clinical aid, counselor's aide, community health outreach worker, or simply peer specialist. Make sure you are allowed to talk about your recovery experiences in your work. That is sort of a litmus test to be sure the role is aligned with the credential. We want you to have a great experience helping others find and maintain recovery. Because the peer recovery specialist credential is relatively new, under 10 years old, there are many organizations that may not be observing best practices. If your organization would like to implement peer recovery specialists, please contact Voices of Hope for a consultation and support. If you are looking for a wraparound organization that can support you with training, internship, and exam support, please check out our website and review our Academy offerings. Voices of Hope, Inc. is a 501c3 nonprofit recovery community organization that is dedicated to advocating for the needs of people with behavioral health disorders in our community. Your donations support those seeking and maintaining recovery in Cecil County and in Maryland. Thank you.